right, everybody. Let's get started. Welcome back to the Smrt live class. If you were here last time, welcome back. If it's your first time, welcome. I'm Shaun, and I'll be your teacher for today. We've got Lane as the moderator, helping us out with the chat. If during the lesson you guys have any questions as we go through it, feel free to throw your questions into the chat or your comments or anything at all, and we will do our best to answer whatever questions you have, okay? So let's get started. Let's kind of pick up where we were last week. We were talking about how to write a good paragraph, and we were talking about how to write good topic sentences. And like that, I would like to, again, today focus on some of the basics of writing, and throughout the coming weeks, we'll build upon what we do today and next class, and we'll get more complicated and more challenging as the weeks go, okay? So I thought that today we would really look at some basic stuff when it comes to not just paragraph writing, but writing good sentences. Because obviously the ability to write an essay depends on the ability to write a good paragraph, and if you can write good sentences, then you can write a good paragraph, okay? So today we're going to be looking at the different kinds of sentences in the English language and some other things, really kind of breaking down sentences and looking at the different components, the different pieces, and how they kind of jive together, how they connect, and that's that, okay? We'll get to some exercises later on. We'll get you guys working. And as I said, if you guys have questions as we go through it, yeah, fire them our way, okay? So let's get rolling. Let's start with this, writing sentences. Okay, so as I said, the ability to write a good paragraph, you have to be able to write good sentences. And the reason I'm looking at this kind of stuff is oftentimes students think that writing is very challenging, and they sometimes freak out if they have a writing assignment. So as I said, we'll take it simple today and we'll go over some basics. Okay, so in order to understand how to write a good sentence, you have to really know kind of the different pieces of a sentence and how sentences are more than just words that are connected, but oftentimes the words in a sentence are kind of connected into chunks. So we're going to look at that. Okay, so the first thing to look at in order to write a good sentence is understanding the difference between what we call phrases and clauses. Okay, so what's the difference between a phrase and a clause is the question. So let's start with phrases. What is a phrase? A phrase is a group of connected words with no subject or main verb. Okay, so you've got a bunch of words that are functioning together as one piece of a sentence, but there's no real subject, and the idea in it is incomplete. A phrase cannot sit on its own and exist on its own. Alone, a phrase is incomplete. Okay, so let's look at some examples of phrases. On the street, to sleep all day, playing piano, and a hot, dry climate. Okay, so these are 4 examples of phrases. They have different functions in a sentence. Oftentimes, a phrase can be used to give detail or information about a sentence. Sometimes phrases can be the subject or object of a sentence, but again, alone, they're incomplete. Okay, and I'll talk a little bit more about why I'm explaining phrases in a bit. So that's a phrase. What's the difference between a phrase and a clause, as I said? So what is a clause? A clause is a group of words, like a phrase. It's a group of words that is connected together, but the main difference is that in a clause, there is a subject and a main verb. Okay, so it's a group of words together with a subject and a verb. And it's important to know that there are really 2 types of clauses that you'll see in sentences in the English language. And some of you may have already seen these before. This might be a bit of a review for you. You've got independent clauses and dependent clauses. Okay, so let's talk about the difference there. What's the difference between a dependent and an independent clause? All right? An independent clause, as I said, it's a group of words and it contains a subject and a verb. That's what a clause is. But to be an independent clause, it has to be a complete idea. So unlike a phrase, the independent clause can stand alone. If you see just the words itself, it's complete. For example, let's look at some examples here. He enjoys listening to music, and Canada is the world's second largest country. Okay? These are two examples of independent clauses, and here's why. In the first sentence, you've got a subject, he, and the verb enjoys, and then you've got listening to music is that phrase there, and that's a complete idea, right? It can stand alone on its own. Also, the next one, Canada is the subject, is the verb, and again, the idea is complete. So that's how we would identify what an independent clause is. Okay, now the difference between that and a dependent clause is that dependent clauses are a group of words that contain a subject and a verb. However, they are incomplete. So dependent clauses, kind of like phrases, cannot stand alone. You can't just have those words alone and make complete sense. That would be grammatically incorrect. Okay, so here's some examples. When the sun sets, unless we change our strategy, and which is located in Italy. So all three of these are clauses. Like the other examples I showed you, they are clauses because they have subjects and verbs, right? The sun sets, we is the subject, and change is the verb. Which is the subject, and is the verb. So they're clauses, but the difference between these examples and the previous examples is that these are, as I said, incomplete because of words like when, right? If you're using a word like when or unless, these are what we call subordinating conjunctions. Don't worry too much about the terminology, but these words, when we use them, we are creating something that cannot stand alone. It becomes dependent. It needs more information to be complete. Now again, it's important for me to mention that this kind of stuff is fine when you're talking about spoken English. If someone asks you a question and your answer is when the sun sets, that's fine. The rules for spoken English and written English are different, obviously. So in this case, these sentences are incomplete, would be grammatically incorrect, and we'll talk a little bit later about how to make them more correct. And the last one here, which. In this case, which is what we call a relative pronoun, and it also creates a dependent idea. If you just say which is located in Italy, that cannot stand by itself on its own and make sense. So you need some more information to connect to that. So really, that's the fundamental difference between phrases and clauses and independent clauses and dependent clauses. Okay, so just to make sure, I know I'm throwing a lot of information your way, so just to make sure that we're comfortable so far, here's the question. And I'm going to even disappear from the screen for a moment. I'll give you 1, maybe 2 minutes to do this, okay? You've got 6 examples in front of you. All you need to do is decide, is this a phrase or a clause? Okay, a phrase or clause. So number 1, believing in yourself, is that a group of words with a subject and a verb, or is it a group of words without a subject and a verb? Take a moment and identify these as phrases or clauses, and even put your answers in the chat, and then we'll go over them together. Okay, I'm just going to disappear here for a minute, and I'll put some background tunes on for you. Go for it. All right. So lots of answers coming in. You guys work fast. That's great. So let's look at these together. Phrase or clause, complete or incomplete. All right. Answer for number one, we've got Roberto says that the first one, number one, is a phrase, and that is correct. Believing in yourself, while a nice thought, is an incomplete thought on its own, right? So you're correct, Roberto. Thanks for that. Number two, Annabelle says number two is a clause after the president speaks. So that's correct. That's great. Because again, if you look at number two, you've got the president is your subject, right? You've got speaks as a verb. Therefore, Annabelle is absolutely correct. That is a clause. Awesome. All right. Coming in from John, who I think said he was coming from California. Number three said that he said number three is a clause. Right? The teacher always comes prepared, and that is also correct. That's good because again, you've got the subject. Awesome. You've got the verb there, and it's a complete idea. Okay, it can stand on its own. Good. And number four, do I have an answer for number four? All right. Yeah, lots of them. Okay, so we've got most people are saying that number four. Some people are saying number four is a clause. Now this one's kind of a trick. You have to be careful of the word before, because sometimes before is used as a conjunction in a clause, and sometimes it's used as a preposition. So before the examination, in this case, here there's no verb, right? You've got a noun here, but there's no verb, so that's a phrase. Okay. What about number five? Why Mona Lisa is smiling? Got lots of answers coming in. Great. So Veronica says that number five is a clause, and that is perfect. That's right. Why Mona Lisa is smiling? You've got the noun or the verb, or sorry, the subject, right? And you've got the verb is. This is what we call a noun clause, right? Why Mona Lisa is smiling starts with that question word there. And number six, wow, it's kind of split. Some people are saying that number six is a phrase. I would say in this case, the Alps are breathtaking. I'd say Alps is the subject, are is your verb, and therefore you're looking at a clause, right? Because it is a subject and a verb in a group of words. Okay, so that's good. This is good. We're on the right track. This is kind of the easy part. Now, before we continue, I want you to keep looking at this same group of phrases and clauses. Now, we know that phrases are always incomplete. But as we said before, clauses can be independent or dependent, meaning they can be complete or incomplete. So look at number 2, 3, 5, and 6, those four clauses, and just quickly decide, are these clauses independent or dependent? Okay, so are they a complete thought or not a complete thought? Again, I'm going to disappear for about, well, let's say 30 seconds because you guys were so fast before. And again, in the chat, make sure to put your answers. Complete or incomplete? Independent or dependent? Okay, I'm out of here. All right. Again, you guys are cranking out the answers. This is great. So the question was independent or dependent clauses. So you didn't have to look at number 1 or number 4, just 2, 3, 5, and 6, right? Are they complete or incomplete? So number 2, let me look at some of the answers coming in. Number 2, Beatrice, I think she said she's from Chile. Is that right? She says number 2 is dependent. And I agree. I think that's absolutely right because of that word after, right? That subordinating conjunction. When you're using words like after, because, when, until, and there's a long list of them, that creates a dependent clause. So number 2, just going to change that to DC, okay, for dependent clause. Good. What about number 3? Some answers coming in. I think most of you are saying that number 3 is independent. And that's correct, right? Because you've got the subject and the verb, and it's a complete idea there. If you put a period on there, it's really just a sentence. It's perfect. All right. 2 more. We said number 5, why Mona Lisa is smiling. I think I even kind of gave the answer away earlier because I called it a noun clause. And in that case, noun clauses are really never going to be an independent clause, right? So I think most of you recognized number 5 as a dependent clause because of that question word there, why, right? Why Mona Lisa is smiling. It's not a question, but when you use words like why or when in clauses like that, then you're going to create dependence. Okay, and one more. Number 6 is the Alps are breathtaking. And number 6 is an independent clause. Let me just do that here. Yeah, because you've got the subject and the verb, and it is complete. Awesome. Okay, so really the question is why are we talking about this? Because we're talking about sentences, right? So why do you need to know phrases and clauses? Well, because it's important to know how to build sentences, how to construct them. And it's important to keep in mind that if you understand these different components, it's going to be easier for you to write good sentences and understand the sentence you're reading. So it's actually going to make you a stronger reader as well. If you know that every word, the more you write, a word will become a phrase, and then a phrase will become a clause, right? As the more you add to it, that clause can become a sentence can become an even longer sentence, a compound sentence in this case. That compound sentence, you add another clause to it, and you've got an even longer, more complex sentence, right? And it's really all about words, phrases, and clauses. And if you understand the difference between these 3 things and kind of how to put them together, then you're going to be able to construct a variety of different styles of sentences and lengths of sentences, and that's what good writing is about, is variety and range, and that's what we're going to look at right now, okay? Before we do, though, actually, we had a question come in, and before we continue on with the presentation, I thought that I would put it up here for everybody to see it. The question was this. Make that nice and big for everybody to see it. Oh. Okay. So I didn't see the name of who sent this in, but the question was, because Canada is the 2nd biggest country, you're missing maybe an article there. I put that. The question was, is this dependent or independent? And that's a great question, and I would say that this is a dependent clause, and this would be incomplete, okay, because, all right? When you start a clause with the word because, you're creating dependence, all right? It looks like that came in from Roberto, yeah? Okay, thanks, Roberto. Great question. Yeah, all you need to know is the word because will create a dependent clause. If you take that word away and just say Canada is the 2nd biggest country, now you have an independent clause, and it's fine. And if you put a period here, Now you've got a grammatically complete sentence. Okay? Great question, and again, keep the questions coming in. Okay? So let's get back into this. Let me present this. Let me make this bigger so everybody can see it. Okay? We were talking about phrases and clauses as this loads up here. Okay, so we said studying a language can be challenging. However, it can also be rewarding as it can lead to many opportunities. Really long, complicated sentence. And again, the point is, if you understand the different pieces of the sentence, and you can kind of take it all down to the most simple forms, right? Words and phrases and clauses. So let's actually get to what I want to focus on today, which is sentences. Now, oftentimes students get, as I said, freaked out about sentences, or about writing, I should say, in English. And they feel overwhelmed with all of the choices and the different types of sentences in English. But really, it's important to know that every sentence in the English language belongs into one of 4 categories. Okay? There's really only 4 types of sentence in English. Okay? You've got simple, compound, complex, and compound complex. So we're really only going to talk about 2 today, just so that we can make sure to get all the work in. We're going to look at the first 2 types of sentences, simple and compound. Okay, so what are these? What is a simple sentence? A simple sentence isn't necessarily as simple as it sounds, but I'll talk about that in a minute. A simple sentence contains one independent clause. Okay? It must contain a subject, it needs a main verb, and it has to formulate a complete thought. So basically, a simple sentence is the same thing as the independent clause. One independent clause alone is a simple sentence. For example, Andrew plays classical guitar. Real simple, just 4 words, right? And in this case, you've got your subject, your verb, and then classical guitar is the object in this case. And that's a simple sentence. Now, it's important to know that simple sentences can be longer, right? You can add information. You can add phrases to a sentence and make it long. Simple sentences don't have to be super short like this. If you say, for example, Andrew plays classical guitar for elderly people at a retirement home every weekend, you can just keep adding and adding and adding phrases to it and make really long sentences, but it's still going to be a simple sentence because there's one subject and one verb and one idea. Okay? So simple sentences can have what we call compound subjects, which means in one sentence there could be 2 subjects. Andrew, in this case, and his sister. Andrew and his sister teach music lessons for children. You have 2 subjects there, but it's still considered a simple sentence because you only have one verb. Okay? One verb means one simple sentence. Also, alternatively, a simple sentence can have more than one verb as well. For instance, this. Now, this looks long and complicated, but it's still a simple sentence. Andrew plays guitar for the elderly at a retirement home and teaches music lessons for children. In this case, it's still a simple sentence because there's only one subject, Andrew. He's doing both of those verbs, so both verbs share a single subject, therefore it's a simple sentence. Okay? Now, as I said before, the simple sentence doesn't necessarily mean it's a simple idea. They can be very dense. They can be very hard to understand at some points. I mean, this sentence, the economic collapse of 2008 brought several countries to the brink of complete financial and social ruin. Move my head out of the way here a little bit. I'm going the wrong way. There we go. Again, this is not a simple idea necessarily, but the structure itself is simple, and therefore it's a simple sentence. Okay? What I want to talk about now is how can we combine these simple sentences? Okay, how can we expand on this? What can we do with simple sentences? Yeah, let me get through that. And that brings me to type 2. Okay, so compound sentences, and I see, John is already talking about fanboys, which I'm going to mention in a bit too. Yeah, some people like simple sentences. Simple sentences sometimes are good. They can be powerful, even if they're short. But sometimes you want to go beyond that, right? You want something a little bit longer. So that's where the compound sentence comes in. And the compound sentence is 2 or more independent clauses connected. So basically, it's 2 or more simple sentences combined to make one sentence. Now, the 2 ideas should be related in some way, and they need to be connected with some form of punctuation, like a comma or a semicolon or something, or some kind of linking word, which is what we're going to look at right now. Okay, so as I said, 2 simple sentences linked, and you've got 3 options. If you want to make a compound sentence, there are 3 different ways to do it. Okay, option number 1 is, I think, it was John talking about fanboys, right? And somebody's asking about what a semicolon is. Great question. I'll get to that in just probably about 2 minutes, okay? Great question. So, 2 independent clauses joined by a comma and a coordinating conjunction. Now, again, don't worry too much about the terminology, words like coordinating conjunction. All that really means is exactly what John was mentioning in the chat. That's what we call fanboys, meaning there are 7 words in the English language that you can use with a comma to make a compound sentence. And it's these 7 words here: for, and, nor, but, or, yet, and so. Some of them obviously more popular than others: and, but, and so, or, really common, nor and yet, not quite as common. Okay, but we'll look at some examples here. So fanboys, how do you use them? Just like this. You've got 2 independent clauses, meaning each group of words has a subject and a verb, and right down the middle, you've got one of those 7 conjunctions with a comma before it. Okay? Also, one thing that I'm going to do actually now, I'm going to ask Lane, while I'm going over this, if our friendly moderator could put the notes into the chat so these guys can link to it if you need notes to refer to. Or also, if you're already a student in Smrt, you can just go to writing 2.1, and you'll see basically everything that I'm showing you right now. Okay, so examples of compound sentences, option number or letter A, like this: it's been a very long day, so I'm going to bed. Okay, or Andrew plays guitar for the elderly on weekends, and his sister teaches piano lessons for children. So in this case, you're using that conjunction, the linking word in the middle, comma with so, to show the connection between these 2 ideas, right? In this case, a cause and effect. The second one, you're using and, very common, to use and in there to make a compound sentence. And another example, obviously very common, is but. Moving to a new city can be a stressful experience, but it can be very exciting. So again, the basic idea of a compound sentence is a subject and a verb over here, a subject and a verb over here, and you've got that conjunction in the middle, combining the 2 to make one smooth, nice sentence. Okay, so that's option number 1, or letter A, I should say, I guess. I've got 2 more choices for you. And this will go to Roberto's question about what is a semicolon. All right. The semicolon is that guy in the brackets on the screen. 2 independent clauses joined by a semicolon. You guys might just know it as a winky face that you use maybe on Facebook, but it has more options than that. Okay, so you can use 2 independent clauses that are connected with just that semicolon in the middle. You've got a complete idea and a complete idea. Connect them to show the relationship between them. Okay, so let me show you an example. I'll give you 2. I did most of the work on the presentation. I deserve a higher mark than my partner. Now in this case, you'll notice that instead of using a linking word like but or so, I'm just using that semicolon right there to show the connection between these two ideas. Okay? Now in this case, it's really kind of a cause and effect, or I'm explaining or expanding upon these ideas. And here's another example. And also, yeah, I'll give you, just a couple minutes, guys, I'm going to give you some practice using this, okay? All right. Last year's flood was very costly. The city spent millions to repair the damaged streets and homes. Again, you've got that semicolon there, just in case you've got two simple sentences or two independent clauses that you want to combine, but you don't want to use and or so or but because maybe you've used it too many times already in your paragraph and you want to do something different. All right, we've got a question coming in from Maria. She says, we cannot use any dependent clauses here because we need a subject verb, right? Yeah, now in this case, with the semicolon, good question coming in from Maria. In this case, we're not using dependent clauses right now, just independent clauses, because they have to be that complete idea. Probably next time we'll talk about using the dependent clauses. Good question. Okay, I think I've got one more example here. Okay, right. So if you're just using the semicolon, it's really important that the connection is clear between the two ideas, because it can be kind of confusing sometimes if the connection isn't clear. Like this example, she loves going dancing at the clubs with her friends, semicolon, she always feels terrible the next day. It's a little unclear as to why she would love dancing so much if she feels terrible the next day. I mean, this is clearly a contrast, right? Showing, as I said, showing a positive side of things and a negative side of things, a contrast. Looks like we've got another question from Roberto. Roberto wants to know if semicolons are popular. In academic writing, yes, I would say semicolons are popular. In casual writing, you're writing emails or that kind of thing, probably not. But they are, you'll definitely see them in articles or in magazines, newspapers, essays, and that kind of thing. And it's really good, even if you don't use them as much, to understand kind of the reason why people are using them. Will even help you kind of understand a sentence that you're looking at. So yeah, I wouldn't say they're super popular, not as popular as other punctuation. All right, did we cut out there for a moment? Okay, that's fine. But yeah, thanks, Roberto, for that question. So let's clear this up. Let's make this clearer. In this case, she loves going dancing at the clubs with her friends, but she always feels terrible the next day. Now this is much clearer. It makes more sense to the reader, right? Because you've got that contrasting word there. So if you're just going to use a semicolon, make sure that the connection is clear. Okay, option C. I'll show you this one and then we'll get you doing some practice here, okay? So the third option is, again, two independent clauses joined by a semicolon, again, but with a conjunctive adverb. Now, what I mean by conjunctive adverb is any of these words in front of me. And I put them on that on the notes that Lane put in the chat that you can refer to. Adverbial phrases and words like however. So you've got as a result or however, in addition, meanwhile, all of these. Nevertheless, on the other hand, similarly. All of these words that we use to show cause and effects or comparison contrast or time relationships, you can connect the two independent clauses with the semicolon and that adverb, and usually, in most cases, you'll follow the adverb with a comma here. Okay, so let's look at some examples. Jamie is happy with her IELTS score overall. Then you got the semicolon. However, comma, she was hoping to get better results on her writing. Okay, so again, really good independent clause. You're putting two simple sentences together to make one smooth compound sentence with however, like that. Here you got Jamie is, you got the subject and verb there. and it's grammatically correct. Okay, let's look at another example. One more. Andrew volunteers at the local retirement home. Similarly, his sister teaches free music lessons to underprivileged children. Again, in this case, you're using similarly and that semicolon to show the comparison between the two. Okay? So the whole point of this exercise, everything that I've been talking about, is to show that you have choices, you have options when it comes to connecting your ideas and making good sentences. You can take a sentence like this. Andrew wants to give back to society in some way, so he volunteers at the retirement home on weekends. You can take that and you can substitute so with a semicolon, like this. Andrew wants to give back to society in some way. He volunteers at a retirement home on the weekends. Or you can take that and add therefore. Andrew wants to give back to society in some way. Therefore, he volunteers at a retirement home on weekends. All three of these sentences have the exact same meaning, but just a slightly different way of connecting the ideas together. Okay? So that's basically the message, is you have options, and it's important, especially if it's an academic assignment, to show your range of language and show what you can do. And if you've got too many short sentences, then you want to add some longer sentences just to get some variety in there. Okay, so if you guys have questions about this stuff, as we're going through it, as I give you the exercise, again, throw them my way and I'll put them up on the screen. But for now, let me put you guys to work. All right? I've been working so hard here, now it's your turn. If Lane can put this, please, in the chat. He's going to put a link to a document that you can go on and you can see it, or I'm just going to leave it on the screen here, and you can use it as it is. And again, in a minute, I'm going to disappear and let you work on it. You've got 5 different pairs of sentences. Each one itself is a simple sentence, right? So A is she didn't bother to bring an umbrella with her, and she ended up getting soaked. So 2 simple sentences. Your job is to show me your variety and show me your range. Okay, so take these 5 pairs and write me compound sentences, but in 2 different ways. I want you to show me 2 different ways to connect these sentences. So maybe I'll do one just to get it going. I would say here, Lane's there too, right? Okay, so keep it simple. You could say here, and? How does that work? She didn't bother to bring an umbrella with her, and she ended up getting soaked. That's fine. You've got the comma and the and from the fanboys, and you've got a compound sentence. What I want is another way to express that same idea. Okay, so take 5 minutes or so, maybe even if we go over 5, that's fine. I'm going to put that fancy music back on, and I'm going to disappear. And try to combine these sentences in 2 different ways. And again, if you have questions, if you're stuck as you're going, throw the questions in the chat and I'll answer them. Okay, so again, I'm out of here. All right. Thanks, everybody. Looks like we got lots of stuff to work with here. Let's go over some of these answers because we're running longer than I expected, but that's okay. We'll go over some of this stuff. So, yeah, I was looking for variety, some range to see different ways of combining these sentences. So, make that a little bit bigger. There we go. The first one, lots of good answers in from John and Roberto and Maria and Beatrice and Veronica. This is great. John says she didn't bother bringing an umbrella with her, semicolon, therefore, comma, she ended up getting soaked. That was good. It's that D there, that's fine. Put a period there, and that's great. That's perfect. Roberto says she didn't bother to bring an umbrella with her, semicolon, however, she got soaked. Okay. Now this is a good effort here with the adverb. However, the one issue here, or two issues with this one. Okay, when we use the word however, typically, grammatically speaking, you want that comma to come after it, just to separate it from the rest of the clause, just like John did here with therefore. Okay. Now the other issue with this is kind of the meaning, the coherence of it, okay? So, however we use to show contrast, but in this case, I think the connection between these two sentences is really more about a cause and effect, right? She forgot the umbrella, or she left the umbrella at home, and therefore she got soaked, and soaked means extremely wet, right, from the rain. So, I think in this case, however, I would say something like as a result, and I think Maria put that there too, underneath. Right? As a result, she got soaked. Maria, I'd say the same thing. This is good here. I would just add a comma. Great. She didn't bother to bring an umbrella with her, so she ended up getting soaked, from Beatrice. Good. Just make sure that you're taking that period away and making a comma there, and take that comma after so away. When you're dealing with adverbs, you want to put the comma afterwards, but with those 7 fanboy words, you don't have to put a comma after, okay? And then you also have Veronica. She didn't bother to bring an umbrella with her, so she ended up okay, that's the same answer, and it's great. Okay, let's go over a couple more of these. Let me see. Roberto says, smoking has been proven to cause cancer and heart disease, yet many people refuse to quit. Yeah. Just put a 2 in here. Good. Now, I noticed that while you guys were doing it, some of you were asking, I think it was actually Roberto that asked, is there a difference between yet and but? And yes, the answer is yes. There is a slight difference. I would say but maybe has slightly more uses than yet, because yet means but. It's the same meaning. It's a contrast kind of word. But usually yet shows a more surprising contrast, right? When you, like in this case, Roberto's sentence here, smoking causes cancer and heart disease. So because of that, you would expect that people would want to quit, but they don't. So that contrast is quite surprising, and therefore you would use yet, right? So let me just fire off another example here, just so you guys can see yet. I would say something like, I have been studying French for months, yet I cannot understand anything, for example. I've been studying French for months, yet I cannot understand anything. Again, in this case, but works. We oftentimes choose to use yet if we want to really emphasize that unexpected Contrast. That's surprising contrast. All right. Roberto understands? Good. That's the best feedback a teacher can get. Awesome. If anybody doesn't understand, let me know too, because that's important. Yeah, now in this case, here, let me take that away, or I'll separate it a bit. Here, most of you went with contrast, and that's great. If you use words like, I think some of you use nevertheless. Down here, Maria used nevertheless, which is great. The only thing here, I would put a comma there, right? So you've got semicolon, nevertheless, comma, many people refuse to quit. Awesome. Okay, let's look at a couple more. Let's look at the next one. Economic crisis has devastating consequences. Many families lost their homes. So you're looking for a cause and effect relationship, maybe? John, in the middle here, says, the economic crisis had devastating effects, or devastating consequences. A couple spelling mistakes in there, but that's okay for now. And so many families lost their homes. Awesome, right. Just watch out for the spelling mistakes in there. Clean that up a bit. And you've got the comma so. Perfect. Great. Beatrice, this is fine too to use and. I would put a comma there. And you want to make sure that is a lowercase m. All right? Good. What about D? The new Tarantino movie has been called a masterpiece. And let's look at Beatrice's here too. The new Tarantino movie has been called a masterpiece, but it has been criticized by some for excessive violence. Again, good choice with the but make sure that the period, because the period ends a sentence, right? It means kind of the stop of the sentence. With but, if you want to make a compound sentence, you need that comma there. Okay? And one more. Okay, is there a bonus answer down here? Okay, so fast food chains are trying to appeal to a broader market. Therefore, they are offering healthier options. Good. So you got so, as a result, therefore, this is all good. Again, the one thing I would do with Roberto's answer here, good with therefore, but make sure you're using semicolon and the comma. Okay. So Abdul number 12, the bonus answer, it says, we know that you like our songs, therefore you can listen to all our music in YouTube. Yeah, sure, that works. Yeah, just make sure you capitalize the we there and put a period there. Awesome. Thank you, Abdul 12, for that. Okay, so we are pretty much out of time for today. Now, I wanted to look at the next exercise, because this is the one where it really kind of forces you to work even harder and kind of come up with your own ideas. Okay, so if you like, you can go ahead and, after I sign off, you can keep this document open and work on some of these sentences now or later, and maybe before next lesson next week, I can put some possible answers here. And if you guys want to check your answers, you can always come back next week and throw some of these in the chat. So let me explain what this exercise is before we run away for the day. Okay? In each one, I've given you a simple sentence. Okay? All you have to do is think of your own independent clause and add it to this sentence to make a compound sentence. Okay? So let's look at B. It says, married men typically live longer than single men. So what you have to do is either here or before it, just use the right punctuation and linking words and create a new compound sentence. So married men typically live longer than single men. You say, what can you say? However, they might not want to. Okay, so now you've got a complete sentence, a compound sentence, two independent clauses together to make a compound sentence. Okay, so use your imagination or whatnot and think of good independent clauses to expand on these ideas. And as I said, next week, or even in the comments section under this, because this video will be in our our YouTube channel, so you can actually go back and look at this again if you need to review the notes. We'll go over some of these answers next week. Okay, so that's basically it for today. Let me close this up. Go back to our nice close-up. Okay, so thanks for coming, guys. I had a good time. This is fun, exciting, and thanks for coming. And just wanted to mention, if you like this, if you want more, and if you want any kind of notification if things change or if new classes get added, be sure to subscribe to our channel, Smart English, and there are lots of other videos there for you to see, starring me and other amazing teachers for you to look at. And we'll see you next time at 3 o'clock Pacific time, Wednesday. Okay? Again, thanks for joining. It was my pleasure. I'm out of here. See you later.